in the news recently, you might have heard about a new Liberal scandal, and it stems from what we're calling is political interference in the lives of private citizens as relating to Canada-China relations. So what happened? So two former ambassadors to China. So former ambassadors is the important thing here. So they're no longer working for the government. They are private citizens. They were called by, what's his name, a bureaucrat within the government, Mail Thoppil, Thoppil. He told the diplomats not to speak out, and he cited election concerns or the election environment, and implied that the PMO's office was making this request. Trudeau has then denied that there's any involvement in there. So someone's lying, someone's not lying. What's the scandal here? Okay, I'll give you what you need to know. Here's what happened. So former ambassador David Mulroney, another ambassador, basically said out loud, Canadians shouldn't be traveling to China unless they absolutely have to right now. Which you should not. The Chinese are randomly arresting Canadians. It's not just the two Canadian diplomats that they arrested. Those are the ones we're talking about. There have been other Canadians arrested for spurious reasons. So they said, don't travel to China right now, it's not safe, which is good advice. The Trudeau government basically said, hey, don't say that out loud. It might inflate, in this election environment, we don't want to have you say that. Then they said, okay, we won't do that. They came to the press basically saying the Liberals contacted us, cited election concerns, and said it was from the Prime Minister's office, which has its own set of problems, telling us not to speak out. So this isn't legal, so to speak. It's very frowned upon. It's not right to do that. However, there are conflicting rights and things in play that we're going to talk about them. Then there was a motion within a committee to further investigate. Should we investigate the claims here? Because either Mulroney's lying, or the bureaucrat's lying, or Trudeau's lying, and something bad happened. We should get to the bottom of it. Should we look into it? Now, there are 9 people on this committee, and 5 of them are Liberals. So you can guess how that vote went. No, the 5 Liberals said, no, we should not look into Liberal corruption. Does that sound familiar? It should sound familiar. That's exactly what happened for SNC-Lavalin. Okay. Let's back up and let's just do this whole story from the beginning. So this all stems from the exact same time frame, actually. The China fallout happened at the exact same time SNC-Lavalin happened. And it's very important because the two are linked in this way. So Meng Wanzhou is a Huawei executive and connected to the Chinese government. Her father is a party member. Any billionaire in China or any major company owner is connected to the Chinese government. The Communist Party, it's a dictatorship. It rules China with an iron fist. We all know that. Now, there are major concerns about Huawei, as it stands, letting them onto the 5G network that we're not going to touch right now. All you need to know is China doesn't really care what anyone else thinks, says, or does. They are sanction busting in Iran. Essentially, the Americans are upset at Meng Wanzhou because she has been helping Huawei send technology underground to the Iranians. There's an international agreement against that. This is sanction busting, and the Americans wanted her detained. So there was an Interpol warrant out for arrest. Legally, if she came into Canada, we would have to detain her because of international agreements. So Canada didn't violate the law. I'm going to go into what Canada actually should have done there, because it's not even a brilliant political move, it's just an obvious one. Now, China started to arrest Canadians and detain them, because China realized at the exact same time, the next week, right? So Trudeau tried to say, oh, we're a country of laws. Like the argument you have to make there is we're a country of laws, there are international agreements, we can't just interfere in the court system, the judiciary is independent, the Prime Minister just can't make a call to the judicial system and release Meng Wanzhou. Right? You want to make that argument. However, the very next week, we found out that the Prime Minister's office and Trudeau actually are quite fond of calling up the judicial system and saying, hey, our friends, yeah, they're going to be prosecuted. Yeah, Quebec construction firm, I know, basically the mafia. But we want, can you just give them a deferred prosecution? We created a new law just for SNC-Lavalin. Yeah, if you could just throw all Canadian principles and good governance. Yeah, listen, I don't care court system. Yeah, we're Banana Republic. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Just do that. The Chinese wanted Canada to do that for them. So we completely undercut our own position, which is why the Chinese are putting so much pressure on Canadians, basically saying, hey, if Canada's a banana republic anyway, and the Prime Minister will just intervene in the judicial system willy-nilly, like we do here in China, because there is no judicial system, why isn't he doing it for us? So that's why they're arresting Canadians and detaining them, which is why you shouldn't travel to China right now unless you absolutely have to. Okay. So that's the whole scandal stemming from China. Now, a couple of diplomats came out and said the obvious. Don't go to China right now. The Trudeau government actually had them say, don't do that. And now, I'm going to pause here and just talk about what are the two things going on here. The SNC-Lavalin, on a scale of 1 to 10 on the scandal meter, is an 11. It's very, very serious. It has major implications. It should be taken absolutely seriously. It is a major, major, major scandal. This is really a 2. However, within context, it becomes more, right? It's shutting it down. Within context, it gets to a 3 or 4. But it's really a 2, because there are two factors at play here. One, should there be bureaucratic interference in what former ambassadors say? And then the other thing is, what about the rights of the detained Canadians and also the farmers that are being hurt by the Canada-China trade war? So there are two things at play here, right? So if I'm Prime Minister, if you're Prime Minister, being a leader is about hard choices, and sometimes you have to compromise, and you can't follow every principle absolutely. It's the real world. So what's the more important principle here? All right, are we talking about what's more important? Is it hurting a bureaucrat's feelings or following bureaucratic rules to the absolute T? Is that what you want to do? Or is it about the 2 to 10 Canadians illegally detained in China, plus the welfare of all the canola farmers and all the producers, and the health of the Canadian economy? Like, that's the two things you're balancing. Personally, I think the latter takes precedent. I would do it with bureaucratic absolute protocol in the sense because you have a major problem with China. Canadians are being detained. It would behoove the government to say, all right, we need to get all our diplomatic ducks in a row, and we need to go after China smartly. So I'm not too angry about them doing it. What I am angry about there is they're doing the exact opposite. This is not the message you should be conveying. So what the Trudeau government did, or apparently allegedly did, is he cited election concerns. And this is what the Trudeau government really wants. They're not really advocating for Canadians here. The problem is they're not advocating for those Canadians detained or the Canadian farmers. They're advocating for the Liberal Party's welfare in the next election. They're saying, hey, tone down the rhetoric of China. Don't make China into such a big deal. It's a massive deal because election concerns, right? It might make us look weak. It might give the Conservatives better play. That's the big problem. Then they squash the investigation with a majority on the committee. That echoes the SNC-Lavalin thing, where Jody Wilson-Raybould was able to present a bunch of evidence that the PMO was illegally putting pressure on the AG to basically throw the law out the window, and they quashed that. No, we don't need any further investigation there. No, nothing to see here. That's a major problem. So what to do here? What's the real scandal here? The real scandal here is actually that the Canadian government is not taking this seriously at all. They are pushing this down the road. They're ignoring China. They're basically, I should have had the meme. It's the meme with the house is on fire, the dog sipping tea. This is fine, right? That's their approach to Chinese relations right now. That's the big problem. Okay, that's the big problem right here. So yes, a bureaucrat, underwent protocol, and that's what we're focusing on. Can a bureaucrat tell private citizens what to say? That's like the technical thing we can get him on. That's the technicality in this issue. But it's really the most irrelevant part of it. The relevant part is the ambassadors actually gave some pretty good diplomatic advice, and the Canadians should be pushing China some more. So what should really have been done? Now, there was an easy fix to this. Okay, Meng Wanzhou was wanted by the Americans. She had to be detained due to national protocols. She's coming over from a plane from China. You know that. She's flying into Vancouver. You have 10 hours to make a decision. Can we come up with an idea that doesn't get Canada in a crossfire? I don't know. Reroute the plane to Seattle. That's all you had to do. This whole thing would have been avoided if the Canadian government had the foresight to call the Vancouver airport, say, reroute that plane to Seattle, have everyone get off the plane in Seattle. Meng Wanzhou would be detained by American customs. The Americans would have her, and then they could fly back to Canada, and Canada's out of it. Then it's just China and America instead of China and America coming at each other through Canada. Right? We put ourselves in a bad position there. That's easy fix number one. That is ultimate hindsight going on there too. And then the third thing is, what should we, what should we value here? Should we value, bureaucratic protocol? Should we say, hey, we need to make sure that all the rules are followed to the T. We know we can never violate them. Or is the real thing the Canadian citizens? And what we're doing is neither, really. We're just screwing around, dug into the middle. And that is basically the Trudeau way.